uh, who is a consultant pediatrician and is going to talk about current statistics of childhood obesity, especially looking at the medical management and serious case review. Kalpesh is all yours.
Thank you, Siba. Welcome, everybody. I'm thankful for being invited for this particular issue because obesity is very close to my heart for more reasons than one. We had initially planned to do this in March, but then a tiny little virus has caused a very massive problem. And I do mean it as a pun. The lockdown issues, non-school attendance, reduced activities, and use of online games and food have created an additional problem, more so than what Siba mentioned in his talk. We all were brought up listening to that children should be seen and not heard. And this has now changed in the last 9 months to not seen and not heard. The high-risk families have been extremely difficult to contact, monitor, and support. And so the normal day-to-day life has changed to waking up, eating, watching TV, watching games, playing games, eating, and going to bed. For a few families, not all of them. If my friend could play the video, please. That is precisely what I see many a time when people get on the weighing scale. Obesity, as we know, has become a global pandemic. What we were in the green before, we have now moved to the red on the right. And I don't know whether if we continue in the way forward, whether it is going to be the end of our road. The current population is bigger than the previous generation and getting bigger. And the statistics indicate as such. Next slide, please. As I work in Salford, and we have been spending the last 2 years trying to move to a pathway, which I'll take you through later on in the presentation. These are the startling statistics. A quarter of nursery children and over a third of 11-year-olds are obese or overweight, of which about 11% in the reception year and 22% in year 6 are obese. We have tried so far, and as Siva has outlined, that there has been inconsistent and slow progress to tackle the issues. And it is very difficult to resist the yummy food that is in front of us and the shops that we see day in, day out during our travels. And we had a recent Manchester Serious Case review to highlight the fact that we need to do something about in children. Looking at the right slide, Salford is one of the areas which is in the top 20 for deprivation deciles in certain aspects or certain areas of Salford. Salford is a lovely place, and especially if you are going towards the BBC, it is beautiful. However, there are certain areas which are very difficult. These are people who live in very difficult circumstances and hence have to live a hand-to-mouth existence, and so often would deal with cheap available foods which are very easy to get to feed the family. In addition, in Salford, we have relatively poor education. And so as a group, we face so many problems to try and engage, participate the families, and for them to give their voluntary involvement. Next slide, please. What I wanted people to understand is that why we are becoming obese is multifactorial, as Siva mentioned. We currently live in an area which is called an obesogenic environment. I haven't put all these slides of the food because that makes me hungry, but we have easy availability of high calorie, energy dense, rich foods. We have reduced play areas. We have more easy transport. So rather than walking, we take the car to go to the corner shop. And that we still retain some of our cultural values, thinking that children who are chunky are healthy. And this is true for many a country person. And with Salford in particular, we have an exodus of a lot of people who come to live there from various countries. And so in a multicultural area, we do find that these cultural norms are still waiting. Now, once we eat all these things, our body adopts a different response to this stimulus. And this is highlighted primarily in what I see in pediatrics, and that is what has made me change the way I practice. If we see a very skinny child at birth who is low birth weight, the current norm is for a dietitian to give high calorie milks to bring the child to an average weight for the population. Now, if we follow that child's trajectory over a period of time, we find that this child is much more likely to become obese. And so there is a reason why that child was very slim at birth, and we need to accept that their genetic potential is going to be for a smaller frame rather than an average frame. The key information, as is outlined on the right, suggests another important concept. The child's body mass index, i.e. the level of obesity or overweight, is linked to how chunky the mother is. Mother's education, i.e. how much education mother has received during her childhood years, is key. The more the mother is educated, the less is the chance of the child becoming obese. And so we are now getting drivers of what we need to do. We all know that deprivation deciles are linked to obesity, and depression is now identified to be more common. It is estimated in studies that adolescents are 32 to 44% more likely to become depressed if they are obese, and the 44% is in girls. We have a national child measurement program, which is the height and weight, which is done by school nurses. And this national program estimates that about 20% obesity prevalence is seen in 6-year-olds. This means if in the country there are 6.5 million children, 1.3 million would be obese, of which if 10% have depression as a prevalence, this takes us to 130,000 children in the country who are going to be suffering with depression in addition to obesity. Think of the effects not only on the health services, but on education, on voluntary support services who provide help to these families, the communities, and think of what these children would become as adults. Genetics is now a major forefront in investigating what happens. We know what we eat makes us obese. We all have bugs in our gut which are helpful. And if we eat fast foods, which we get from the usual McDonald's and the KFCs, we change the proportion of the bacteria which are in our gut. And some of these bacteria make us leaner. Some of these bacteria make us obese. If we eat more fiber, fresh fruit and vegetables, we are likely to be leaner. That is why vegans are likely to be more lean compared to people who eat meat. I do love animals and I find them very tasty. But given this information, even I have decided to go off meat completely, and I have recently celebrated my first anniversary. Next slide, please. Siba has given a very good diagram of the problems, and I just wanted to allude to this. What is more important is that the quality of life scores in these children are much lower. So they see more problems, they are not happy. More importantly, in my role as the designated doctor, I find that there are significant safeguarding issues. These obese children become obese adults, and in addition to the difficulties with their life, the consequences are an increased expenditure on the health budgets. And with COVID coming in, these things are going to become more and more difficult. Could I have the next slide, please? So, why did we start looking at this? We had a child F1 serious case review, and everybody who has a mutual great friend who we see every day called Mr. Google, if we visit him and type in child F1 serious case review, we will get this particular serious case review from Manchester. This was a young 13-year-old who was neglected, who had severe obesity. He weighed more than 1.5 times my current weight. He also had a heart problem, and he unfortunately passed away because of this. So when we looked at the nitty-gritty of this child's case and life, this raised a lot of challenges into how agencies worked to integrate and provide support to this child and family. We identified the gap in services. We also identified that even professionals did not have enough expertise in understanding what causes obesity in children. We identified that there are challenges faced in relation to diagnosis. A lot of children, and even now, I find people don't want to be weighed. There was multi-agency problem and discussion, and there were uncertainties on when to consider safeguarding. Nobody asked the child what he wanted. And now with COVID coming in, things are becoming more difficult. Next slide, please. So Weiner and his colleagues gave us a framework. So looking at childhood obesity itself is not a safeguarding issue because there are other causes, genetic causes, etc. However, if we find that the family show poor engagement and there is consistent failure to change lifestyle and engage with agency support, that gives us a mark to consider safeguarding. And each area has thresholds of need for children. We also should know that obesity may be a part of wider concerns of neglect. So I see children who are primarily obese with safeguarding issues. There are other children where there is neglect in the family, and obesity is a part of that. So we need to look at all these things, and there are other markers like not in education, domestic violence, parental mental health, parental ability to respond to needs. And for this, Salford is now doing a Thriving Families tool. Next slide, please. So far, what has the country done? The strands and strategies are absolutely right. We have to consider child's right to health, and we have approaches at various levels, including the government, the society, how to integrate the family into a life course, which is good, healthy lifestyle, friendships, relationships, avoiding smoking, abuse of substances, etc., and trying to deal with poverty, mental health, finances, housing, etc. The government has done a lot on sugar reduction, encouraging activity in schools. The schools have taken this up. There is a school food plan. And in health, we make every contact count to try and give that information. Next slide, please. So if we have to work together to tackle obesity, we have to work together with public health programs, which is the blue circle, the health programs, which is the green, and the local authority. Somewhere in between are the police and voluntary agencies, and at the center is the child and family. And each of these public health programs looks at early years, environment, how to engage community and families in healthy eating. Health look at how to manage, how to involve camps, both for children and adults. The local authority look at school and education, and police and voluntary service provide their own individual roles. Next slide, please. So this is a pathway that I have devised with my colleagues, and it has taken me more than 6 months to come up with this pathway, which I have shared at the Greater Manchester Designated Professionals Network. And we are currently auditing whether this pathway works for safeguarding. Now, I couldn't do safeguarding on its own, so I had to do health issues. So if we look at the second box, how a health professional could help by identifying the issues, looking at health problems, what is the family attitude, how are their lifestyles, etc. Coming down on the left arm, how to provide lifestyle advice, what weight management strategies we have, which is the Red Pepper program in Salford, and giving links to these professionals. And we monitor it 3 monthly. And if we find that things are rapidly escalating and not improving, we take a multidisciplinary approach, consider safeguarding, use a thriving families tool to look at this. In the right big box is the medical aspect of what professionals should be doing, how to take a history, how to assess, what investigations, etc. But then below these boxes, we have a pathway. If there is improvement, we follow them. If there is no improvement, we do have multi-agency meetings, because unless we have the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, we can't complete the picture. If we find that there is poor engagement or non-compliance, we consider safeguarding and refer to bridge. If we find that there are no major health issues, we still have some time to engage the families. This is the right arm, continuing a team around the family. And with no improvement, we refer to the bridge for safeguarding input. Come down to the second page. This gives a lot of references and links to every professional who can use this. Can we go down further, please? Go down, continue. This is for various ages. And this is the pathway for non-health professionals. Because there are school teachers, there are housing people, there are police, probation, etc., who may go to a family's house and find that there is a child who is overweight or obese. And this is the pathway where they can speak to the family, say, seek medical advice, and at a future appointment, they check it whether they have followed that up. If the family has followed, then they can document and continue to monitor in their own roles. But if the health advice has not been taken, they would link in with their lead, safeguarding lead in their agency, and consider whether the safeguarding threshold is met and make the referral to bridge. So this way, they can also participate in the area of safeguarding. Next slide, please. So apart from appropriate diet and exercise, these are the various apps that we can give to parents so that during lockdowns, their children can continue to remain active. Next slide, please. So we need ownership, not only from professionals, but also from families to their problem. We need leadership from strategic leaders to engage with the families and make out plans with community involvement and a partnership between each of these agencies and families to get success. And if we do this, if this is succeeding, then the next slide will show what our success would look like. We would be going in the right direction. Thank you very much.